Hi, I'm Ashy, and today I'm going to show you how to paint this Irish landscape in watercolor. This is a real-time tutorial, so you'll see it from start to finish. Nothing is sped up. So if you like that type of content, give this video a like, comment, let me know, because this is kind of what I'm shifting toward, and so I'd really like to hear your feedback on this type of longer format video. But this view is from, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Fanad, F-A-N-A-D, Head Lighthouse in Ireland. So it's like looking back from that, and there was this cool, just like hidden beach there. And I really liked this composition, so I wanted to give it a shot painting it. So let's dive into the tutorial. For this painting of a little like hidden beach cove amongst cliffs, I'm not going to start with a pencil sketch. I'm going to start with just sketching out in some very light green watercolor here. And I'm gonna roughly use the rule of thirds. So I'm cutting my page into thirds here, and I'm gonna use that to mark out my like background hills and then foreground hills. So my background hills are gonna be on the top third, and they're gonna come down and be just kind of jaggedy. Okay, and I'm just getting in the shape of those hills there. Okay. And then this one is gonna come down to a area with two little buildings. And these buildings I'm just gonna sketch out, like outline them, and then I'll save those. I'll keep those white. Okay, so there's kind of the first one there. And then the second one is gonna be here and have this kind of triangular roof line, but with a little extra on top. And it's gonna come back . There we go. Something like that. Okay. And then I'm gonna sketch in where there's gonna be some cliffs here. So I'm just gonna get that edge of those cliffs in. Up closer to the houses here. Okay. The houses are kind of more centered than I wanted. I wanted them more over here. So maybe I'll move them. This is gonna come down to a little valley here, which has a little, I'm assuming there would be like a little stream or something here, but anyway, this is a little valley. And then from that valley, you have a hill coming up this way. Okay. And then we're gonna have our foreground hills, which are gonna be on the lower third here. So get those in here. And this one's not gonna quite come to the edge. It's gonna jut up in to the picture here and then come back down this way. Okay. Now I'm gonna kind of blend out this area
I'm gonna go over it in greens anyway, so it's not a big deal. I'm using greens to sketch, so kind of get rid of those buildings. Obviously I didn't get rid of all of it, but that's okay. And I'm gonna shift them over a little bit because I want them more on this third rather than right in the center. Okay, so you just kind of add some green over that to erase it so that I don't get confused. Okay, just blend that out. Okay. Now I'm gonna put that here instead. So we'll get our little triangle roof line here. Okay. Come back from that. Down. Okay. And then the second one will be here. A little bit shorter. Okay, so that's the general shape here. And then I'm gonna have the beach will be here. So this is gonna be kind of edge of beach. Okay. I'm gonna switch and do just some yellow ochre, very light, to get the edge of the beach here. So it's gonna come around from this area and meet up with this foreground hill here. So then this will be ocean. I need to put in the cliffs here now. So the cliffs are gonna come around down here. I missed that line, so it's gonna alter my beach some, but no big deal, because the cliffs are gonna be dark, so it's not, doesn't really matter. Okay, there we go. And this will be that angle down. Okay. So again, kind of blend out that line. And then adjust the beach just a little bit. Okay, so that's the general sketch part of it. Now I'm gonna get a large flat wash brush. This is just a cheap 2-inch brush. Got it from like Michael's or something, but it's really cheap, but it is just great for adding in a lot of water. And I'm just going right over the whole sketch. If it bleeds out, I don't really care that much. It's very light, so it's not gonna matter. Including even over those houses that are going to have some white areas. It just will knock back a little bit of the white of the paper, but it's fine. Okay, so nice and wet. And then I'm gonna take a large round, this is a size 22 round, huge, and get some blue for a sky color. So this is the well that I like to mix like grays and blues in. and I have ultramarine and burnt sienna in it already, which is making this gray. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more ultramarine, and that'll get like a moody little sky color. And I'm gonna add that in to the wet on the sky. And then I'm bringing that wash down all the way into the hills. And I'm going to add just a little bit more gray to some areas, a little bit more burnt sienna, just to get some variation, a little bit more blue, so that it's not just one flat color on the sky. Okay. And then I'm going to go in and add some greens, but I want the greens in the background to be very bluey green to force some perspective. So I'm taking some aqua green here, and then I'm going to put that in along this back edge. That's a lot, but I can lighten it up a little bit. Okay, add just a little bit of my gray to it. Okay. Take some more of my gray and add in some more hills back here. So I'm just kind of varying that color with grays and greens. And letting it bleed up into the sky so there's a nice soft edge. And blending that down into the green of the foreground here. I am not painting the beach area at all with the greens because I don't want that to have any greens in it. I want it to be yellow. Golden sands. Adding a little bit more olive to make it a little bit brighter, more vivid and warmer in the foreground. So it's taking some of the blues out, adding in some more yellows to bring that forward. Okay, and I'm going right along the base of these houses and the edge of that cliff. Okay, we bring a little bit more of that bluey gray green color in between and above the house. Just painting around it. A little bit more blue in there. Put those hills in the back. So this is just ultramarine in this gray palette, so, or in this gray well, so it's toned down a little bit. Okay, lift back a little bit of the color from the house. Want it to kind of blend into the background a little bit, but not completely. Add in that warmer color. around this one. Maybe this is like a little barn or something. Okay. You can see I just added in like a variety of blues and greens there in the background. Now I'm gonna do this hill, which is gonna be a much brighter green. So I'm gonna throw some yellow. This is just permanent yellow, not permanent yellow, lemon yellow deep and yellow ochre. And then I'm gonna add some green to it and get a really bright green. So this beach and cliffs is from a picture that I took in Ireland. So in Ireland, it truly is just all of the colors of green. So getting a lot of variety in the greens, some a lot more like gold and vivid green, and then some a lot more muted, will kind of force that, make it look much more natural, and just really pull out all of those colors. Now we're getting to the point where I really shouldn't be touching that sky because it's going to cause cauliflowers, but that's okay. And I'm gonna just blend down this into this cliffside, which are going to be like rocky hills. So just let that bleed a little bit, prevent any hard edges, and same with this green of the kind of mid-ground to this foreground hill. Okay, now I'm gonna let that dry, and then I'll start working on the ocean and the foreground. I can actually get the first wash on the ocean. Let me do that. So I'm gonna take my ultramarine and burnt sienna again and get a nice grayish blue color. And put that in. Now I want some areas to be white, so I'm not gonna put that color everywhere, especially as I get more toward the beach where there's gonna be some waves crashing. I don't want that blue to go over that. So just get a little bit out here in the deeper areas of the ocean. Start getting some variety, some texture. So dropping in some darker colors there. And I don't want to have that blue end in a hard edge at my hill, so I'm just adding some extra water there to make sure that it blends out. And then as that area dries a little bit, I'll splatter in a little bit of clean water just to get some texture. Now, doing it now while it's super wet, you're not really gonna get much of an effect because it's all just gonna kind of blend in with the rest of the clean water, or the rest of the water that's there. But if you wait until it's a little bit drier and then do it, then it actually it repels the paint away where it's more wet. So it creates some texture. So just gotta be a little bit patient and let it dry there. or if you're not patient like me, you can use a heat tool to dry it partway. Now, just know that does change how the watercolor spreads and reacts because you're speeding up the drying process, so it doesn't give it as much time to react and do its thing naturally, but it is faster. So, okay, there are some of those splatters. And now I will go ahead and let that dry naturally and then come back and start building up more details. Okay, for the houses in the back, I'm gonna put a wash of yellow ochre mixed with a little bit of my reds, just to make it a little bit more goldy, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, and I'm gonna put that over the roof. And I'm using a pretty thick version of that paint. And I'm just brushing it in. I'm gonna leave some light areas to be like a reflection. Okay, and then for this one, do the same thing. Brush that in. Okay, I'm gonna do just a tiny bit. Like you're kind of seeing the edge on the other side. Okay, and then I'm just gonna do a really light wash of gray for the side of this one. A little bit on this one too. And adding in some darker color right along the edge of the roof line to be a stronger shadow. Less water, maybe a little bit more, and then same along the edge here where the roof would be overhanging, just to give it a little bit of depth there. And it doesn't have to be a lot by any means. A little bit of blue to pull out the edge of the house there. Okay. Now I'm gonna blend that out. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to take a medium round brush, so size 16. I guess it's pretty large, but it's not my 22. So it's medium in the ones that I'm using today. And I'm going to mix up some more grays. And put in my cliff here. So I got my top edge, and then I'll pull down from that toward the ocean. Over on this end, I'm going to start fading that out to join in with the grasses and beach here. Put in some darkness in some of the areas just to get some variety, so more blue and just thicker paint. And here added just a little bit of that yellow ochre to warm it up as I come toward the beach. Okay. And if it has some weird textures, that's fine because it's rocks, it's craggy, it's cliffside, so it's okay if it has some extra texture. I do want to bring some of these down a little bit farther. So that it's not just one like straight wall of cliffs, but maybe there's some areas going back into like caves or little inlets. Okay. And that will come out to different little rocks coming off into the ocean. Okay. Okay, back to the ocean now. So ultramarine. And I'm gonna add in, so I'm gonna turn my paper here and then put in some dry brushing. just get some texture there. There we go. And then some of these areas, it's going to be darker and more like murkier looking, where it's coming up to the cliffs. So more gray. Coming up into here. Blend that out. A little bit more that color. Bring it up to this hill here. I'm gonna add just a little bit of green into it. It kind of tones it down a little bit, but also adds a little bit more variety. Okay, back to some more gray. Add in some more hints of rocks around here. Okay. Now I want these cliffs to be pretty dark. So I'm taking a darker wash, but I'm dry brushing over so that I pick up some of the texture. And this is rough watercolor paper, so it does have a little bit more texture. So you're gonna see that. And so dry brushing, I just have not very much water on the brush, and then I'm holding the brush very flat to the page and just quickly moving my brush up or down because I want them to be like vertical strokes for these cliffs. Take some dark color. So this is half and half ultramarine and burnt sienna, but it's very concentrated. And I'm going to add in some areas of very dense dark. Pigment so that I can pull out some of the definition here. And I don't want all of these lines to be from top to bottom, so some of them will be kind of in the middle. Some of them will come up from the bottom. There's going to be a little bit of variety. And they're pretty vertical, but they don't have to be perfectly straight up and down. And add some jaggediness to them. A little bit of scratchiness in areas. Okay, take some of that darker pigment and blend some of those areas out so that they don't just look super random there. So more toward the bottom and just dry brushing that up. A little bit more warmth. Add some of that in. Okay. Let's take a tiny bit more. Define that top edge just a little bit more in some areas. Okay, now I'm gonna get some yellow for the beach, and I'm just watering down yellow ochre here, and I'm gonna wash that over the beach. And then let that blend off into this foreground hill. Let it blend out into the ocean a little bit. Just adding clean water into the foreground and the ocean here so that it can blend out. Okay, and then I'm going to start working on this part of the ocean here. A little bit more of my beach color. I kind of want to gray it out just a little bit. It's a little bit too bright and vivid. So just adding that kind of along the edge of the cliff here. And then transition from the beach into this green hill. Okay, so for this part of the ocean, I'm gonna do my gray blue again. Add just a touch of my greens to it. And then we're gonna bring that in toward the sand. A little bit more blue. Okay, and then up close to the sand here, we're gonna have where the waves are gonna be kind of crashing. So we'll have some white space between the sand and the beach. Just get a little bit more blue in here. And I'm just, again, kind of doing those horizontal brush strokes and not covering the whole page because I want variety in the tone. Okay, now changing to my size 8 brush, I'm gonna lift out a little bit right along the edge there. Okay, and add a little bit of gray right along there to be kind of like a shadow. And then same coming up onto the beach where the waves would be coming on. Adding just a little bit of gray. And then we have our wet sand. Which is much more of a grayish color. So I can add in some of that to this area where the sand's wet. And then move into my brighter golden yellow sand. Another layer wet on wet for that wet sand color. And then I'm going to add a little bit more grays coming up toward where the white is here. Just some very, very light strokes. And just using the tip of my brush and kind of zigzagging around that area just to get some little texture. Then I can lighten it up and do the same thing, coming out a little bit farther. Just take some dry brush and drag that across. There we go. Get a little bit more gray. And really get in that shadow here to define the edge of the white rushing water and the sand. Okay, and I can take a little bit of that and add some of that in to the white area too, just so that it's not one area of just stark white, because we have some swirling water too. Okay, where you're gonna see a little bit of color. So just a little bit of dry brushing in that area. Okay. Now I'm gonna work on the foreground here. So there's gonna be some areas that have like rocks and then other areas that are gonna be grassy. And so I'm gonna get some sap green, a little bit of reds to mute it. And it's a pretty warm green here, so because it's foreground, so I want the foreground to be warmer. And I'm gonna kind of make this hill here mostly just grass. And then I'll put some rocks in as we get farther this way. Okay. So when I'm doing the rocks, I'm gonna do some negative painting around where they're gonna be to leave some white space so that I can paint the grays and the browns of those rocks. Okay, here we'll have some rocks starting. And here we have some like grasses and I don't know, mosses or something growing on the rocks. Okay, so leave a little bit of white space in some areas there to be more prominent rocks. Okay, maybe we have a little bit growing right here on the edge to separate it from the ocean. Okay. Now I'm going to take a flat brush for the rocks just to get a little bit more angular strokes. Get my grays mixed up here. So I have still my same gray, ultramarine, burnt sienna in various amounts, various concentrations. Start kind of light and get some strokes painted in. And I'm gonna paint in some shadows first. So I'm kind of working backwards here. I'm painting from dark to light, but that helps me kind of determine where my rocks are going to be. Okay, so we'll just get some shadows in. Maybe there's like a line of rocks here that are coming up. Okay, then do the same thing here. Here's some cragginess. Okay, this is going to be a rock here, so I'm going to get in at the bottom of it. And then here's the shadowed side. Get the lit side after, same here. Get different shapes. So we might have some mosses growing on it. Right, they don't all have to be the same. In fact, they shouldn't all be the same or else it won't look so realistic. Okay, So this is going to be like a rocky area here. So just get some shadows in and add some warmth to some of these areas. Okay. Okay, I'm going to cover my ocean mostly over here and add in some splatters. Okay, and covering up that part of my ocean, add in some splatters, mix up the colors a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to take a smaller brush and get in some more specific shapes here. Okay, so I'm adding some thicker paint to some of these areas and letting it bleed out to create some soft texture into some of these. Like this rock is pretty prominent, so I want it to be nice and textured. Yeah, I'll make it even a little bit bigger. There we go. And this one, let me cool it down a little bit and add in some darkness around there. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my greens here and add in some more color to really pull this forward. It's gotta be a little bit brighter, more vivid. And just kind of varying the tone here. So some it's going to be a more pure sap green. Some areas are going to have more red in it to tone it down and make it more of a brownish green. And then bring some of that color down this hill. Over some of these rocks. Get some dry brushing in here because I don't need this to be too much more vivid or too much brighter. Okay, bring a little bit more into some of these areas. Kind of blend that rock in a little bit with these grasses. Okay. Now I'm going to take a card, and this is drying quite a bit, and I'm going to scrape off some of the paint to create some rocky textures. So I'm changing the angle of where I'm scraping, or how I'm scraping. And that's just going to create some variation in the rocks. It's pushing some of that paint down into these other areas, and it's causing some scratches on the paper itself, which causes the paint to kind of pool in those areas. Over here, I'm going to add a little bit more warmth and just kind of dry brush to create a rock that's kind of sticking up more. Okay, add a little bit more darkness to one side. Dry brush some on top of these other rocks where I left white space. Okay. There we go. So now I'm just taking whatever mix of grays I have and dry brushing that over where I just scraped, just to get even more texture. Okay. And like here, I want to make a rock look like it's kind of sticking up off of the hill. So paint that in more specifically, and then add in some blues to one side to give it that three-dimensional look. So now it looks like this is in shadow and that top part is lit. See, that part has some rocks that are flatter, not quite as prominent. Now for this area, I just want to add a little bit more depth and dimension. So I'm going to add some more browns in here. And then maybe some more hooker's green, so it's just a little bit of a more bluey green here. Okay, just a little bit more variety there. And I'm actually pretty happy with these rocks where they are. I want to add a little bit more darkness down here where it goes down into the valley. So I'm going to take a clean brush, plain water, and put some water in that area where it's going to be coming down, sloping down toward that valley. Okay, and then I'm gonna take my hooker's green, add a little bit of red to it to make it darker. And then I don't want it to be super dark, so I'm gonna take some of that paint off, and I'm just gonna tap that in along the bottom of that valley. Okay. And then I want it to bleed up into the hill. So I dried off my brush and I'm dragging it up now. Add just a little bit more. Dry off my brush and drag it up into the hill. And I'm kind of angling it. So I'm swooping this direction to make it look like it is curving up that hill. So there's a little curve here and it's in shadow. Okay. Just a little bit more. Then I can add a little bit more of my bright yellow green to the front hill. And then blend that edge out onto the beach. Maybe some of this green's coming down onto the beach. Where some of the grass is growing because of that little stream that's coming down. Okay, just a tiny bit more of my cliff color here. Bring it down and around. I'm gonna see if I can lift some highlights. I'm gonna see if I can lift some highlights in the cliffs here. So just taking a damp brush and dragging it down. Where I want the highlight. Kind of pushing that paint around a little bit. Okay. So kind of next to those darkest spots, having a little bit of a highlight to set them off. Looks nice. Okay. So I'm just using a stiffer brush here, and it's a flat brush, to kind of bully the paint around on the cliffs, just to give them more texture. So just taking clean water and lifting up some highlights off of the cliffs in the background and adding a little bit of extra texture while I'm at it. Okay. And this is just a stiffer brush that I'm using to lift there. Okay, now I'm gonna come in and work a little bit more on these houses. So I don't need to do a lot because I want them to kind of stay pushed in the background there, but I want to add a little bit more green around them and kind of bring some of the green up to the edge of the cliff here. And then just take a little bit blue and add, or gray, so ultramarine and burnt sienna, and add a door and some hints of some windows here. Okay. Add just a little bit more darkness. For a shadow. darkness under this roof line here. And then just a tiny bit more color to the roof. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more darkness to some of these rocks, just to set them away from the background a little bit. I mean, away from the ocean a little bit. Just gonna add in a little bit more dry brushing here to get texture, but also that darkness. Okay, just a little bit of splatter here. Now I'm just going to take my dark again and go in just one more time to some of these areas on the cliffs to really darken them up even one more time. Being sparingly adding it here. Okay. Just a few little places. blue and bleed it in. Not bleed it in, but blend it into some of those areas on the cliff. Just a little bit of dry brushing with the large brush over the ocean. And then a little bit of whitewash. So this was dried whitewash that I'm just reactivating with some water. And I don't want it to be like too opaque. So that's why I'm not using fresh straight out the tube wash. Drying off my brush and dry brushing some of that into the ocean. Just to get some extra texture there. Add a little bit in on some of the rocks, especially the highlighted edges. Then dry brush some areas around also. Okay, get a little bit of that on the cliffs as well. Just kind of dry brushing some of the lighter areas. Anywhere that I want there to be a highlight. Maybe on the top here and right along that to set off that darkness. Right along the top and then drag it down. More here. Okay, tiny bit of a highlight on the roof of this house, these buildings. So I had left some white space, but I'm just adding a little bit more. And then just a little bit kind of dotted around where the water would be hitting the cliffs. So I'm going to be spraying up off some of these rocks. Okay. A little bit thicker on some of these areas on the cliff. Okay, now I'm just going to add a little bit of texture onto this hill here. So I'm just kind of dry brushing. Okay. And then a little bit lighter, but dry brush up into these rocks as well. Get some grasses. Okay. And then I'd like just some very, very mild texture on this hill. So just getting that same color that I used and very lightly dry brushing over that. And just a little bit up on this hill as well. So I'm just using my bluish gray here. So I'm not even using green, and I'm just dry brushing it over that green to get a little bit of texture. So that makes the foreground have the most texture, the midground have a little bit, and then the background really just has no texture. And I just let that all blend into the sky, and it's all like the same value as the sky too. So it pushes it back. I'm just gonna kind of blend out this hard line that was there between the two houses. There we go. And I think that's it. I might change my mind and add a little bit more later, but for now I'm thinking that that's where I'm gonna leave it. Okay, so I was done with this painting, but then the more I looked at it, I felt like I wanted the hills around the houses to come forward just a little bit more. So I'm gonna add some more color to them to differentiate them from these farther background hills. So this one and this one here, I'm gonna leave in the background, and then I'm gonna add color to this one here across the cliffs, and that'll incorporate these cliffs more into the grass area, and then a little bit more here too. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water into those areas because I still want it to be a little bit soft on the edges. I don't want it to be a super hard line there. So I'm gonna add water up into the sky and the background hills and around the house. Okay. And I'm using just the large 2-inch flat wash brush here and putting water in very generously. All right, now I'm gonna take my large 22 round brush and get a bluey green. So it's hooker's green, a little bit of aqua green. Okay, and then just a tiny bit of pink to mute it down. Okay. Make sure I still have a good amount of water in there because I don't want it to be too dark, but I do want to add more color here. Okay, and then I'm just washing that over and take a little bit of sap green onto the top just to brighten it up where the sun might be catching it a little bit more. And then the darker areas get that more hooker's green, which has that more blue to it. A little bit more aqua. So I'm just touching in a variety of colors here. And along the edge of the cliff, just adding a little bit of that color, coming down. Okay. I'm gonna bring that down behind the house. Okay, lift up a little bit away from behind some so that it's not exploding too much there. Okay, I'll lift it away from the cliff just a little bit. There we go. Okay, rinse, and then come into this area with a little bit warmer and add a little hill here. And then cool it down and mute it to bring it down into this shadowed area. Blend that up. Okay. Just getting a little bit of dark right along the top edge. Okay. Get a little bit of my yellow green. And put that right against that little valley. Okay, so now kind of the value of the cliffs and this hill that the houses are on matches better. And I think it makes more sense there together. And I'm just gonna get a little bit more of that color. And kind of incorporate this house a little bit more. So add a little bit of a shadow under the house. Maybe some little like bushes growing up around. Okay, so without having too much detail, I kind of incorporated those houses a little bit more into the landscape there. Just a little bit more yellow ochre onto the beach. Just to kind of shadow the edge there. give it just a little bit of texture. Add just a touch of gray, but a warm gray, so more burnt sienna. More to distinguish the wet sand. So just a little bit more blue in that area. Just a little more texture. Okay. Pull a shadow down a little bit more onto it. Okay. I think that is good there. But you know, I might come back and change it again, who knows? But for right now, I think I'm happy with that.
So again, here is that completed painting of the Irish Beach Inlet. I really enjoyed doing this painting, and I'm very happy with especially certain parts like the rocks here. I love the texture and the detail that that brings to the foreground, and I love the atmospheric background where it's just all blurred out. It was super fun to paint. I really hope you give it a shot. If you do give it a shot, I'd love for you to show me your work. I'm on Instagram at Painting with Ashy. So you can tag me there and show me your versions of this. And if you like this tutorial, please give the video a like. It would really help out the channel, get more views, and check out the rest of my channel for tons more tutorials. Have an awesome day. Thanks.